warm and friendly hello! Welcome to lovely Las Vegas for Coast to Coast Hoops with myself, Greg Hoops Peterson, now part of the VSIN family of podcasts. We've got an excellent podcast for you as joining me in segment number 2, we're going to have Ben Steven aboard. He does such great work here at VSIN. He is a man that loves the Big Ten, much like myself. He does a great job in terms of all of our college sports action, and we're going to be chatting with him about what we've seen out of the Big Ten thus far. We do have an interesting game going down between USC and Minnesota. We're also going to be talking about how feisty some of these Tier 2 teams are in college basketball, the teams outside of Arizona, Iowa State, along with Michigan, the vulnerability that some of these teams have in conference play with true road games, and some of pesky underdogs that might be able to lend you some value as well. In the final segment, going to get you guys picks and analysis on every game on the betting board for this college basketball Friday as we hit some bank shots. If you have a question, comment, segment idea, what have you for this podcast, you have one or two ways to be able to fire those in. First one is my Twitter/X timeline at gunit_81. Keep in mind, letters CM, they mean does not matter, so as per usual, please do send these into the timeline. The other way is find an Apple Podcast review. If you rate this podcast 5 stars, it is very much appreciated. From there, you're able to fire in whatever you'd like to hear on this podcast via that 5-star review. While I did not get in any Twitter/X questions today, we did have a great day of college basketball on Thursday. Let's take a look back at it, try to find some trends, and try to get to know these teams a little bit better.
Games from yesterday is Greg buzzing about. Here is the rowdy recap.
Not a ton of ranked teams in action. 2 ranked Big Ten teams were Illinois. They were able to take it to Rutgers 81-55, so a quality win and cover there. As for Illinois, they go 11 out of 31 from three-point range, but they hold down Rutgers, as Rutgers in this game only turned the ball over 7 times, but they shot 37% from the floor, 38% at the free throw line, 3 of 10 at the charity stripe. For Illinois, did a nice job controlling this game on the glass, winning that rebound battle 45-32, and Keaton Wagler was able to give the team 17 points, so they were able to do a nice job finding a way to persevere there. And then Michigan State, they get the win, but no cover against Northwestern, this by a count of 76-66. And for Michigan State, they go just 5 of 18 from 3, but they hold Northwestern to going 6 of 26 from 3-point. Nick Martinelli showed up. He had 28 points, and he got you the cover if you bet on Northwestern. But for Northwestern, blown out with regards to the rebound battle, 42-25. And for Michigan State, they do lose the turnover battle, 15-6. So that was able to keep Northwestern lively in this one. Denver just continues to play overs. For the Denver Pioneers, they have played every one of their games to the over, aside from one push. So I believe that puts them at now 14 overs, 0 unders, and a push. As for the Pioneers, they were looking to try to pioneer a cover against South Dakota State, and they were able to do so, 87-79. The final, and Denver does go 9 of 24 from 3-point. South Dakota State just 6 of 18 from 3, but they got to the free throw line, 19 out of 25 at the charity stripe. South Dakota State, they win that rebound battle 41-34. So that was a game of a lot of intrigue. This was an unranked game, but how about what Ohio State was able to do to Oregon? They go on the road, and as I am doing this, they just got the job done, 72-62. The final for Ohio State, just 6 of 18 from 3, but Oregon once again playing without Jackson Shellset, and boy did it show, 7 of 30 from 3-point. Oregon only turns the ball over 7 times in this game, but they lose the rebound battle 41-32. And for Ohio State, every single one of their starters were able to score in double figures, with Devin Royal being able to supply a double-double, 14 points, 10 rebounds, and things all sorts of rough right now for the Oregon Ducks. Things are right now all sorts of rough for Towson as well. After they had just 2 losses in conference last season, they returned much of that same core. They're now 0-4 to start CAA play. They lose to Hofstra 78-67. Cruz Davis just continues to cruise a big performance at 32 points. And for Towson, they do go 8 of 22 from 3, but for Towson, they shoot overall 34% from the floor. They go 12 of 37 on their 2-point shots. They barely win the rebound battle. They lose the turnover battle 14-8, so that one was less than tremendous for them. And for this Hofstra team, they actually have been a really good against the spread team thus far this season. If you're taking a look at your top ATS teams in all of college basketball, William & Mary has been as well, but they were unable to get a cover on Thursday. But I mean, that said, they're now 11-3 against the spread, but Hofstra 12-2 against the spread. Only Portland State, who's currently 9-1 against the spread, has a better against the spread record thus far. Sam Houston State is one of those teams, though, that they they've got a really nice against the spread record as well. They are now 10-2, and they were able to find a way in a lot of places to be able to get the cover against Delaware. This was 72-60. Now, I will say that overnight number was more around Sam Houston State being a 12 to 12.5 point favorite, so you had to bet this one the day of the game because this got down to about 11.5. But for Sam Houston State, they do find a way to persevere against a Delaware team that just has not been great offensively. Delaware, they go 10 of 32 from 3. And Sam Houston State, only 8 of 26 from the outside, but Po Boy King, he was 5 of 13 from 3-point, 22 points, and he still has a pretty amazing name. So there's that aspect of things. Liberty, they were able to do a nice job in Conference USA play, 72-56. They absolutely lay it on Louisiana Tech, as for Louisiana Tech, just not a lot of offense going. 9 of 24 from 3, but unfortunately with their 2-point shooting, they go 12 of 36, and for Liberty, they actually win the rebound battle 41-33, which you'd think that would be the opposite in this game. And for Liberty, guy that was really able to step up for the team, about 15 nice points out of Brent Decker Jr. He's been one of the best 3-point shooters in all of college basketball. One of the top over teams in all of college basketball has been New Mexico State. They finally got an under. I believe that this was just their third under all season long, but they take it to Western Kentucky 80-64 the final. It's been a little bit up and down for the Aggies, but Jamel Jones, top scorer, was able to supply 24 points. Team goes 10 of 23 from 3, and for Western Kentucky, they go just 5 of 22 from the outside. So a very nice performance out of them. A team that has also been very good at being able to cover spreads thus far this season. Tarleton State, they are currently 10-3 against the spread. They were doing battle with Abilene Christian, and well, they did not get the cover in this one. Abilene Christian 84-80 the final. This is a total in the low 140s, and Tarleton has also been a good over team. They've been really speeding themselves up. Tarleton really not taking a lot of threes. They won 1 of 6 from 3, and Abilene Christian 7 of 17 from 3-point range. Cade Hornecker was able to supply 12 points, 10 rebounds. Braden Hubbard 22 points, and for Tarleton State, they do lose the rebound battle by a count of 30-26. So that was a very good performance out of Abilene Christian, and Southern Utah has been one of your roughest teams in college basketball this year. They were able to cover the spread, 89-72 the final, so yay, verily there. But Southern Utah, they have been giving up a lot of points in general. It just has not been a great season out of them. As for Southern Utah, against the spread, they have been one of your lesser teams in all of college basketball. Right now, the worst team against the spread in all of college basketball, by the way, that'd be Texas Southern. Right now, they are 1-10 against the spread. It has been all sorts of less than tremendous for them. Southern Utah, by the way, now 4-8-1 against the spread with everything that we did see on Thursday. And getting back to those two Big Ten teams, Oregon is out 5-10 against the spread. Rutgers, they're 5-11 against the spread. So these have been two teams that have just been rough for you in general. And while there's no team that's playing overs like Denver, you've got Louisiana Monroe, who has been a really good over team as well. 13 overs to just 2 unders thus far this season, and they were able to play yet another over on Thursday. As for Louisiana Monroe, they fall to Louisiana 85-79. This Louisiana team has gotten absolutely nothing going on offense all season long, and Louisiana Monroe 7 of 13 from 3-point range. Louisiana, the Raging Cajuns, Joshua Lewis, a star freshman, 26 big points. He stepped up in a big way. Louisiana wins that rebound battle by a count of 40-23 as well, so that was a very interesting result to say the least. And for Louisiana, very surprisingly, they actually closed as a 7.5-point favorite in this one. That I thought was very, very befuddling, to say the least. But still, yay, verily, if you were able to take the points with Louisiana Monroe there, and they were able to do a nice job in terms of getting you that over. We'll see one of the best over teams, Miami of Ohio, 10 overs to 3 unders in action on Friday, along with Oakland. Oakland, 11 overs to 4 unders, so those will be a lot of fun. But Queens NC has also been one of those teams that has been playing a lot of overs for you. 11 overs to 4 unders thus far this season, but in their game on Thursday, they did a really nice job in terms of being able to buckle down on defense against Jacksonville. 77-51 the final, and this Jacksonville team, man, it's just not great for them offensively, to say the least. They went 4 of 19 from 3, shot 37% from the floor, lost the turnover battle 13-11. And I mean, Queens did their part for the total. They went 13 of 27 from 3. Chris Ashby, he would go 6 of 8 from 3-point range, 20 points. So a very nice, easy cover there for Queens NC. But right now for Jacksonville, things are just a little bit, actually a whole heck of a lot of rough for them. If you're looking at WCC play, I am doing this as the Gonzaga versus Santa Clara game is going on. I do have to have this up at midnight Pacific, 3 o'clock a.m. Eastern, so typically I'm recording these recaps right around about 1 a.m. Eastern, and as of right now, Gonzaga in a bit of a nip and tuck game, 55-51 against Santa Clara with about 12 minutes and change remaining in that second half, but For Oregon State, things have been not great for them to say the least, and they do find a way to be able to have a nice performance against Seattle, 68-55. The final, as Oregon has been one of your lesser against the spread teams in all of college basketball, but for Seattle, just 6 of 26 from 3-point range. Seattle won the turnover battle 14-11, but they actually lost the rebound battle 46-37 against an Oregon State team that has not been good on the glass thus far this season. And with this Oregon State team, now with regards to their against the spread record, thanks to being able to pull this one off, they do advance to being 7-11 against the spread. And for Loyola Marymount, 10-6 against the spread. Right now I'm doing this in the closing seconds of their game against the Dons of San Francisco, and currently they're trailing 65-64, closing a lot of places right around about a 1 or so point favorite. So when this is posted up in the AM, you'll know how they're able to do, but that was a game of intrigue. By the way, Seattle is now 6-10 against the spread, even though they've been able to have, in my opinion, a very rock solid season. They have not been covering a lot of spreads, and then if you're looking at teams that have been covering a lot of unders this far this season, boy, has it been interesting what we've been seeing out of Northern Arizona. It's up to 9 unders to just 4 overs thus far this season. Northern Arizona, they are unable to get the job done on Thursday, but hey, for Northern Arizona, they continue to do a pretty solid job in terms of keeping things low scoring and in terms of keeping things a slog, as they do fall to Weber State by a count of 78-65. Weber State was able to do a solid job from 3-point range at 13 of 29. Northern Arizona is just 6 of 24 from distance, and for Weber State, 16 big points out of Jimmy Vartinen, who's been missing for like 5+ games. He just returned in this one, so that was a big booster. Some of the best under teams in all of college basketball were in action on Thursday, and I recap 2 of them. Illinois, 11 unders, so 4 overs. Jacksonville, 10 unders to just 4 overs themselves, so those 2 teams have been able to cash quite a few of those. Michigan State now up to 11 unders to just 5 overs this season. That should come as no surprise, but we've been seeing a lot of unders out there in the America East, with Maine being a team that's really been just getting mained in general. We did talk about the America East Conference yesterday with our good friend Tanner McGrath, so that was a lot of fun, and for Maine, they're not having a lot of fun thus far this season. They do cover against UMBC, but another under there, 69-62. The final is Maine, I believe, has scored more than 64 points against just one Division I team thus far this season. UMBC, they go 4 of 10 from 3-point range, and UMBC, they do not get the cover despite going 17 of 23 at the free throw line, as they were in a game that just did not involve a lot of possessions in general. UMass Lowell and Bryant was a game where Bryant just once again did not show up offensively, 77-63. UMass Lowell was able to find a way to get the job done there, and Bryant has been one of your lesser teams against the spread in all of college basketball thus far this season. And for Bryant, now 11 unders to just 3 overs thus far this season. That was a closing total that was in the low 140s. You saw that close right around about a 143.5, so you were able to get yet another under in a Bryant game. Lone team has really been good to the over thus far this season has been Vermont out there in the America East, and for Vermont, they were able to get a win but no cover against Binghamton, 60-59, as they just got completely neutralized. Binghamton deal with a lot of injuries. They had a nice little bit of a rise up there, and for this conference as well, you've been seeing quite a bit out of NJIT in terms of not being able to cover the spread, but they did a relatively solid job on Thursday as well. They were able to get an 80-76 win over New Hampshire. It's been an NJIT team that for me has been a little bit disappointing, so we'll see where they're able to go moving forward. In the entire America East, just full of a lot of teams have not been able to cover a lot of spreads for you. NJIT is actually now one of your top teams at 9-7 against the spread. Albany is right now checking in at a nice hearty 4-9 against the spread. They got the night off on Thursday, but we shall see what they're going to be able to do moving forward. And if you're taking a look at trend-wise, what we're getting in college basketball right now has been a very underwhelming last week or so in college basketball. Ever since we have stepped into conference play, the unders have been hitting like wildfire, 174 unders, 157 overs with that Gonzaga game pending, so 52.5% to the under, and the dogs are really barking. Dogs are hitting at 53% over the last 7 days, 175 and 156 against the spread, and overall for the season, the underdogs now have the lead on the favorites against the spread, 1,281, 1,286 against the spread for underdogs, and the unders are now hitting it about 50.5%, 1,301 unders, 1,277 overs. So that's where we're seeing college basketball right now, and that's what we're all seeing trend-wise. Coming next, how about if we do chat with our good friend Ben Steven, who does such a great job covering all things college sports here at VSIN, right here on Coast to Coast with myself, IU Indy, now a part of the VSIN Family Podcast. Side edge this college basketball season? Well, VSIN experts use CBB Analytics, the most comprehensive college basketball analytics platform in the world. See injury impact, on and off data, clutch time performance metrics, first versus second half splits, and so much more. Utilize the promo code of VSIN, that is VSIN, to get $30 off and find your betting edge over at cbbanalytics.com. That is cbbanalytics, all one word.com. For anyone that is new to VSIN, well, I wish you a friendly hello. This is an attention to anyone that is new to VSIN because you're able to get some free stuff with our daily newsletter. It's a great way to catch up on everything that's happening in the sports betting world. It's delivered straight to your inbox every single morning. VSIN's newsletter offers picks, data, strategies for the day's betting menu, and so much more. Sign up for free today over at VSIN.com/newsletter. That's VSIN.com/newsletter, and start receiving your free newsletter tomorrow morning. That is VSIN.com/newsletter. Stay ahead of the game and bet smarter with VSIN. And we're back here, lovely Las Vegas, for Coast to Coast Hoops with myself, Craig Hoops Peterson, now part of the VSIN family podcast. Always great to be joined by this man, as we've got Ben Stevens aboard. He does a tremendous job here at VSIN, doing a lot of our weekend hosting, whether that be our live betting shows, whether that be our tailgate shows, getting you set for some great college sports, college basketball, college football, and certainly a big week here with the college football playoff getting resumed on Friday, and he's on top of it all. You're able to follow him on Twitter/X at Ben Scott Stevens all together. And Ben, it's great to get you aboard. Thank you.
Yeah, Greg, great to be here. As always, college basketball conference action intensifying as college football's calendar winds down. It's a great time, man, all across the country in college hoops.
Absolutely, and I'm sure that you've noticed this as well as I have. The prevalence of underdogs here over the last week or two, ever since we've gotten into conference play. And Is that something that you do look for a little bit more in conference play? Because I just feel like the tenor of these games now, in comparison to what we were getting in late November, early December, just intensifies, and the familiarity of these teams, I think, lends itself to both home teams and these teams that are catching points.
Yeah, no doubt about it, Greg. I think it's really spot on, right? Whenever you see a line, when you're looking to break down a college basketball game, you start your handicap and you scratch your head or think, what? That can't be the correct number. What are these odds makers thinking? There is often a reason. And in conference action, because of the familiarity of these programs, some seeing each other twice in the same season, or they have seen them 4 times in the last 3 years, despite all the changes, it is that ability to walk into the same environment, understand that atmosphere, and especially at home right now to have that home court advantage in conference play. It's paramount. And you're seeing spreads because we are going like versus like in conference play, as opposed to earlier a non-conference matchup, maybe a power conference school against a lower mid-major, or in an MTE in one of those early non-conference season tournaments where so much is different. It could be the arena. It could be where they are playing, who they are playing, all of that stuff. Now you go to conference play and you see these numbers that are so much tighter in terms of how they are. And Greg, the first thing that I always look for is that home underdog against a team that you do not believe that if they played on a neutral court, they should be getting less than 10 points against. For instance, Minnesota and Iowa the other night. The Gophers pull off a second consecutive home upset in the barn against a team that was at least ranked at the time, as they did earlier in 2025 before the calendar flipped, against Indiana. That line was 6.5 at open, closed at 5.5. The market buying back on Nico Medved and Minnesota. They win that game outright. So many notable examples of that, and you will continue to see that even when a team has a ranking next to their name as they go into a home environment where they're either booked as a short favorite or even as a short underdog, where you scratch your head at the line, but it's there and it makes sense for a reason.
Yep, absolutely. And that's always something that you want to look for, those unranked home teams being the favorite over the ranked road teams. Now, sometimes the line just gets a little bit too ridiculous, but certainly that has been a system that has yielded a profit for many, many bettors over the last few seasons, as Ben Stevens, who does such great work over here at VSIN, joining me on Coast to Coast Hoops. And you did mention Minnesota at the barn, and ironically enough, that's really the biggest game, in my opinion, that we've got on Friday. It is USC going on the road. USC is about a 2 to 2.5 point underdog to Minnesota. That totals in the mid 140s. How do you take a look at this matchup with USC now being on game number 3 of their, we're going to call it just Central Time Zone road trip, and a Minnesota team that it's been a little bit up and down for them, but you mentioned it, really nice win over Iowa a few days ago.
Yeah, I think it's a really interesting game, Greg, for these USC Trojans who are in the thick of their Big Ten road trip. And the West Coast teams bemoan this. UCLA has an interesting spot. They're at home on Saturday against Maryland. They were on the road this past week in the Midwest against Iowa, against Wisconsin before they head back out east to Penn State and Ohio State next week. Hey, when you take the almighty TV dollar, or at least your university does, this is what you see. USC entered the first full weekend of Big Ten basketball last weekend. That Friday night game in Ann Arbor against Michigan, that was a top 25 tilt rank. They were the 24th ranked team in the country. They get shellacked by 30. They backed that up a few nights later going into East Lansing and losing to a good Michigan State team by 29. I think if you looked at the resume for Eric Musselman and company, despite the Maui Invitational win, there are not all that many marquee victories for a USC team that I think struggles on the defensive end of the floor. The key for me in this game is the pace, is the tempo. USC much, much faster by nearly 300 spots on KenPom in terms of the adjusted tempo than that of Minnesota. But can that USC defense that has struggled, giving up 96 to Michigan, 80 to Michigan State, contain a Minnesota side that wants to play at a slower pace and find their shots? I think Minnesota has done a really good job of that. And although he was not the game's leading scorer in the victory against Iowa, keep an eye on Cade Tyson, the North Carolina transfer, who is averaging close to 22 points per game this year. He has been dynamic in Nico Medved's scheme.
Yes, he certainly has been, and I think that it's going to be really interesting to see what we get in this game. And so glad they mentioned Cade Tyson. Just was not able to really get a lot of playing time over at North Carolina, but 2 years ago when that guy was at Belmont, that guy was a walking bucket, shooting it really well from three-point range. So that's going to be a fun game to take a look at. And then the tenor of the Big Ten right now is that, in my opinion, we do have those big three teams. Michigan State, who's in action as we're doing this on Thursday. We shall see how that goes against Northwestern, no doubt about it. Michigan, and then you've got Purdue. And for Purdue, they got a little bit of test in the second half against Washington. Never really were in danger of losing that game outright, but they don't cover the spread. And Michigan finally got their first test in darn near a month and a half against Penn State. And how do you take a look at these big three teams? Because I do think that they are clearly those top teams, but teams like Illinois, teams like Nebraska that we're going to be seeing over the weekend, I think that they're lurking very closely. And a lot of people thought that it was just going to be Michigan, Iowa State, and Arizona that was going to run the sport. And I do think that that second tier, that third tier might be a little bit better than what a lot of people gave it credit for a few weeks ago.
Yeah, no doubt about it. And Greg, I think Purdue is a great team to highlight, right? The 23-point loss as the first-ranked team in the country against a really good Iowa State team, as we all know, inside Mackey just over a month ago at this moment. And from that point, Purdue has won 6 straight, all 6 of those wins by at least 8 points. The closest game against Washington earlier this week, Braden Smith was quiet in the opening 20 minutes, finishes with a very Braden Smith stat line, 23 points and 7 assists. This is a Purdue team that has won their last 6 since that Cyclones lost by 23.5 points per game. They are back to the most efficient offense in the country. And it's a team, Greg, that when you look at the KenPom projections, and take that, of course, with a grain of salt, a lot of basketball to play, but they are favored to win every game, even the matchup against the Maize and Blue on February 17th, because that game will be played in Mackey. I think there is some value on Purdue right now to win the Big Ten because Michigan has jumped to such a staunch minus money odds on favorite. I think Purdue has settled, has found their groove, and looks like the national championship contender that we all thought they would be. And Greg, the bet that I made way back in April of last year when I knew that Oscar Clough was going there and Omar Meyer was going there as well on a 13-1 number for the Boilers to win it all. So I do think there is that cream of the crop, of course, in the Big Ten, but teams like Illinois, teams like Iowa, and certainly Nebraska is not just a feel-good story. They are a legitimately great basketball team. They are going to give some great chase within the conference race itself, and I think from the Big Ten in terms of anything they might do in the NCAA tournament.
Yes, I do think that it's going to be really fun to see what Purdue is able to do because everyone is going to highlight the offense, no doubt about it, as they lead the country as we're doing this in terms of points per possession, but that defense is becoming a little bit better, and with what you're able to get out of Trey Kaufman-Renn and Oscar Clough down low, that's big, and I think that even with the game that we did see a few days ago for Michigan against Penn State, they're looking like clearly that top team in the Big Ten, but how do you take a look at this Michigan team? Because they were dump trucking everyone prior to that game. They had won 10 straight games by 18 plus points, but now they've got that close call against Penn State. They had close calls against Wake Forest along with TCU, and I do have a little bit of a fear that with this Michigan team, just road games in general, much like it happens for 99.99999% of college basketball teams, might be a little bit of a challenge for them. Even going back to teams that won the title a few years ago, and those two UConn teams, they struggled a little bit in January conference play on the road, and I feel like Michigan might be cut from that same cloth.
Yeah, it's really interesting, Greg, because when you see a team that has been as dominant, a wagon that Michigan has been, I think it also gives us the idea that winning on the road in conference, even when you're favored by 21 and a half and you win that game by one possession, should never be taken for granted. Now, Michigan probably could have and should have played better in that game. When you look at how that game played out, it's still really interesting. Penn State did not shoot the ball well. They were 35% from the floor. It's not like they were lighting it up from three in some unaccustomed way. Mike Rhodes' team is the worst three-point shooting team, albeit a small sample size. In Big Ten play, only about 4 games for the entire conference so far in this season. And yet Michigan was out-rebounded by Penn State, which is not something I think many teams are going to be capable of against Adai Mara, against Perez Johnson Jr., against Yaxel Lindeborg. But that's what Penn State was able to accomplish. And they had a couple of good second looks. Their final look with Freddie Dilion taking the shot, I don't think it was the scheme or the play that Mike Rhodes drew up on the sideline. I still think this Michigan team is the best in the country. And that's not a hot take or a bold assessment by any means. I'm really interested to see how this Michigan team returns home on Saturday against Wisconsin, who got a much-needed victory at home in Madison against UCLA earlier in the week. Two good teams, Wisconsin not as good this year as they were a season ago. Can Michigan find that resolve? I'm sure Dusty May has orchestrated a couple of difficult practices for the Maize and Blue back this week in Ann Arbor. If they get back to a double-digit win grade, which I think is what is going to be expected come Saturday afternoon inside the Chrysler Center, I'll feel just fine about Michigan. And sometimes you have those weird anomaly games in conference play.
Yep, you certainly do. And with Penn State, I did think that they were a team that was able to cover the spread. I didn't think that they were going to be keeping it within one possession, but I did think that that number was getting just a little bit too far expanded, because what I liked about Penn State in that game is that they're a team that wins the turnover battle. One of the best teams in terms of protecting the ball, one of the better teams in terms of generating turnovers. And what sort of things do you look at in terms of these underdogs that have a little bit of value? Because for me personally, I do look at the turnover battle much like I did with Penn State, and then a team like a Fordham out there in the Atlantic 10 out there in the great state of New York. I look at them being able to rebound, really being able to shorten up games with how slowly they play. Those are the sorts of underdogs that I think yield just a lot of value this time of year.
Yeah, no doubt about it, Greg. I think it's a really good point in terms of conference play as well. Because when you get to the NCAA tournament, you look for the Cinderella story for the team that is elite offensively and can shoot the heck out of the ball from beyond the arc. Because if they get hot on any one night and their offense is designed to do so, they can take down Goliath. But that, of course, relies on them staying hot and hitting their threes at a high clip, which in conference play, week in, week out, day in, day out, night in, night out, is not always going to be the most reliable of metrics to find your spot in. I think turnover rate is a big one. By no means is this game an underdog potential. It's a top 20 tilt inside Carver Hawkeye on Sunday between Iowa and Illinois. But one of the reasons I think Iowa responds from the Minnesota loss is because Illinois is a lot better defensively this year than they've been in a long time. They're top 20 right now in defensive efficiency. They haven't ranked top 20 nationally since the 2020-21 team that was a 1 seed in the Big Dance. But Illinois doesn't really turn you over. And then you go to the other side of things, Iowa, meticulous, efficient in how they set up their offense. If you're not getting turned over, you can designate what you want to do offensively. So I think that's a really big way of looking at the tempo, the pace, and probably that turnover rate. And as you said, rebounding rate, because if you're rebounding at a high clip, you're going to have more possessions to keep the game within striking distance when booked as an underdog. I would say those are two key metrics, certainly in conference play. And if a team is just lights out from three and they get hot in a good spot to kind of compensate for some of the lack of advantages they might have otherwise, then of course that's always a good recipe as well.
Yes, it certainly is. And just when you take a look at the landscape of college basketball, is there a team or two that maybe we have yet to talk about? It could be in the Big Ten, the Big 12, it could be a mid-major conference that you're just starting to feel really good about and perhaps you feel like is a little bit undervalued this time of year.
Greg, I've been so high on Vandy. I continue to be stunned by what Mark Byington is doing in year number 2. A perfect 15-0 start, 1 win away from matching the best start ever in program history. Tyler Tanner has been the best player, in my opinion, or at least the best guard in the SEC. He's becoming a bona fide scorer and a bona fide just elite player on the offensive side of the floor for the Commodores. There's another couple of teams that when you look a little bit deeper down where things are starting to trend, I was high on Villanova. A home loss on the main line to Creighton, not exactly the way that you draw it up. I really think what BYU has done, and in this offense, of course, they are going to be put in good spots by Kevin Young. But when you have guys perform in the way that A.J. Debonsa, Robert Wright, and Richie Saunders did just a couple of nights ago in the victory against ASU. Now, Arizona State, not the best Big 12 team, but winning that game by nearly 30. And all three guys I mentioned scoring at least 23 points. Richie Saunders leading the way with a big 31-point performance. This is a dangerous BYU team that I think can compete with anybody. And sometimes when you are as high tempo and as fast paced as a BYU is, defense starts to take a hit. They're top 20 in the country in terms of efficiency. So two teams I am incredibly high on that I think can make a lot of noise come March, BYU and Vanderbilt, because they start on the offensive side, but better defensively perhaps than they get credit for.
I am loving what I'm seeing out of this Vanderbilt team, doing such a great job defensively. Even with Frankie Collins being out, they've been able to do a rock-solid job being able to generate those turnovers, doing a great job with their backcourt play, so absolutely love that. And in terms of the board that we do have for Friday, it's a little bit shorter, and we did break down that USC versus Minnesota game. Anything else that might be standing out for you, or is this a Friday where you're just prepping for like 100 million billion games that we're going to be getting on Saturday?
Yeah, 149 Division I men's college basketball games, if I am not mistaken, on Saturday. And of course, Greg will be watching the college football playoff semi between Indiana and Oregon. I would direct everybody's attention, though, on a great Friday night in the MAC. Akron, Bowling Green, what John Gross continues to do with his Zips. They are one of the best teams in that conference, but they were beat last week at home by Miami, Ohio, who is looking for to stay unblemished in terms of how they have started this year. Perfect at 16-0, trying to get to 17-0. Their victory against Western Michigan earlier in the week, 24 consecutive home wins for Travis Steele and his Hawks. That's a program record. They have never started better, Greg, than 10-0 in a season. They can get to 17-0 with a victory over Toledo on this Friday night. Going to be a good game. I like the Rockets. I think it will be high scoring. The tempo is always there for Miami, Ohio. They shoot the crap out of it from beyond the arc. I think they're going to be a very fun team, probably in my estimation, as the champions of the MAC and earning a spot in the Big Dance. They'll be one of those teams you look at on the 12, 13, 14 line and maybe take a shot on in your bracket or to keep a game close in the round of 64. Really great story in college basketball this year, what Travis Steele has done at Miami, Ohio, the former Xavier coach, of course, in now his 4th year with the Hawks. I think it continues with their 17th straight victory to start 2025-26.
It's going to be a fun one. And out there in the MAC, Miami of Ohio, who you mentioned, Akron, those two teams are so rock solid. And the MAC last year was way far down. It feels like they've had a nice come up. So very good to see that. And both MACs are in action. The MAAC, as I like to call it, and the one with 1A. And a man that always gets a perfect day when he's on this podcast, that'd be you, Ben. You do such a great job here at the network. Let the good people at home know it's all on tap for you and how people can follow along on social media and other platforms.
Yeah, Greg, you said it. 149 games on Saturday in men's college basketball. We'll have you locked and loaded on Live Bet Saturday. It's myself and Jared Smith, noon Eastern time to 3 p.m. Eastern. We'll be sweating out those live bets here on VSiN, having a lot of fun, setting the stage for a great Saturday. We've got NFL action, of course, in the postseason as well. Following, you can always follow me at Ben Scott Stevens on Twitter, the X Machine, whatever you call it nowadays. And Greg, thanks as always for having me on your show, man.
Always great to have Ben aboard. Every single time he joins me, he lends such great insights and did so once again today. So big thanks to Ben for joining me on Coast to Coast Hoops, now part of the VSiN family of podcasts. Coming up next, it is that time of the podcast. I give you picks and analysis every game on the betting board for this college basketball Friday as we hit some bank shots. Your lovely Las Vegas for Coast to Coast Hoops with myself, Greg Hoops Peterson, now part of the VSiN family podcast. Always great to be joined by Ben Stevens. He does such great work here at VSiN. taking a look at all things college sports, college basketball, college football, and he does a great job on the weekends every single time he joins me, lends such great insights, and did so once again today. So big thanks, Ben, for joining me in the last segment. Now it is that time of the podcast. I give you picks and analysis on every game on the betting board for this college basketball Friday as we hit some bank shots.
Most financial establishments close at a certain time, but not here. It is time for a side and total on every game on today's betting board bank shots.
Do note that as per usual, any changes are made to these plays will be listed up on my Twitter/X feed at gunit_81, and we are going to be going in Las Vegas rotation order. There's no games on the extra games board or anything like that, so that keeps things really clean and easy because we are just going in time order today. So yay verily there, as we do start things off with 867, 868. Miami of Ohio is going to be on the road against Toledo. Toledo is a 1.5 point underdog. 164.5 to 165.5 is the total, and I did make a total of a 165.5, so 164.5 is my buy point on the over, but made of Miami of Ohio the 5.5 point favorite. I'm going to be one to lay the number. This Miami of Ohio team has just been so sharp with their offense. You've got so many guys that are able to pop it and lock it from 3-point range, as right now for Miami of Ohio, they've been able to shoot from 3-point range 42.9% in a roadside shoot court venue. Overall, they're 40th in terms of points per possession, but away from home, that actually goes up to 18th. Peter Suter has been that main 3-point shooter, as right now he's shooting 48.5% from 3 with 12.5 points per contest, but then you've got Elmar Allison at 6'7", 6'8", give you about 12.5 points, shoots 44% from 3. Brent Byers shoots 43% from 3. Evan Upsero shoots 39.5% from 3, and for Miami of Ohio, each of your top 8 scorers shoot at least 38.7% from 3-point range, and in a nip and tuck spot, these guys shoot 78.5% of the free throw line. That's the top 12 mark in all of college basketball, and for Toledo, they're just way down with their 3-point shooting. Like, they're about on 90th in all of college basketball with their 3-point shooting percentage right around about 33.5%. That goes down to 32.5% at home. They've been better at generating turnovers. This is a top 100 team in terms of turnovers forced on a per possession basis, but Miami of Ohio is that as well. Sonny Wilson has been able to supply about 17 points per game, shoots 38.5% from 3. Leroy Blyden Jr., nearly a 40% 3-point shooter, 15 points per contest, and you do have two guys that are able to give you some board. Sean Craig with about 8 boards, 13 points per contest, and then Austin Parks gives you about 6 rebounds per game, relatively good size, but not a lot of depth with this Toledo team. They become a little bit more of a mid-tempo team, hovering in the neighborhood about 200th in the country in terms of total possessions per game, and you've got a Miami of Ohio team that is very balanced because they're going to be looking to push a little bit of tempo, but they're not going to play like warp speed fast right now. For Miami of Ohio, they do check in terms of total possessions per game more in that neighborhood about 90th, and I do think that they find a way to be able to get the job done, especially with Antoine Woolfolk doing a good job of being able to give you some rebounds, and with Miami of Ohio, I do think that they're going to protect the ball because if they do so, they face a Toledo team outside the top 280 in terms of both opponents' 2-point and 3-point shooting percentage. So set total of 165.5. We'll take the over at a 165 or less, and we'll lay with Miami of Ohio. 869, 870 on the card. Akron is going to be playing us at Marist. Marist does find themselves as a road favorite here of 6.5 points. 137.5 to 139.5 is the total, and I do like the over. I set my total at a 140.5. Now you have a Marist team that has been very supreme with regards to their defense, and they're leaving something to be desired on offense. 253rd in the country in terms of points scored on a per possession basis. Sacred Heart is more around about 219th, and for Sacred Heart, I do think that that's going to be going northward a little bit because Anquan Hill, who last year shot over 40% from 3, still supplying the team with 15 plus points, 5 plus rebounds per game, but he has been shooting less than 30% from 3-point range, but for the Sacred Heart defense, man, it's not necessarily efficient to say the least. Currently 285th in the country in terms of points allowed on a per possession basis. Marist is number 4 in the country. I will say they're giving up about 20.3 points more per 100 possessions away from home rather than at home, but this has been a unit that has been in the top 10 in terms of opponents' 2-point shooting percentage each of the last years, but it's a little bit different this year. They become a top 50 team in terms of turnovers forced on a per possession basis, top 15 team in terms of opponents' 3-point shooting percentage, and they've got 2 nice double-figure scorers themselves in Rayshon Blackwell along with Elijah Lewis. They combine for 26 points per game in a nip and tuck spot. These two guys, along with their number 3 scorer Justin Menard, all shoot at least 82% of the free throw line. Marist, a top 12 team with their free throw shooting percentage at about 78.5%. They've been able to get some solid rebounding with about 5.5 boards. Jaden Daughtry doesn't really give you a lot of scoring with only about 6 points per game, but throws in there about a block per contest as well. And the Justin Menard right around about 4 assists per game. It is a Marist team team that is about country average in terms of taking care of the ball themselves, and they're not like overly dominant on the glass, but they don't allow a ton of second and third chances as well. Meanwhile, for Sacred Heart, you do have a lot of guys that they just do a great job in terms of being able to bombs away from 3-point range, as you've got Tashawn Gittens, who's been the main scorer with about 15 points per game, shoots 36% from 3. Niall Ralph Byer shoots 44.8% from the outside, 12.5 points per contest, but with this team, allowing teams to shoot over 36% from 3, they are outside the top 285 in terms of opponents' 2-point and 3-point shooting percentage. I do think the Marist finds a way to get the job done, and both of these teams are really hitting their free throws, as Sacred Heart, also a top 20 team with their free throw shooting percentage at 78.2%, and this is a Marist team that's not afraid to put you on the free throw line. So set a total of 140.5. I do like the over, and I do think that Sacred Heart does just enough with that shooting to be able to hold in this game, and with Marist, they are giving up quite a bit more away from home rather than at home. So set a line of 4.5, won't take 5+ here with Sacred Heart, and I am going to be in on this total under as well. 871, 872 on the card. Mount St. Mary's plays us to St. Peter's. St. Peter's an underdog of 1.5 points. 136.5 to 137.5 is the total, and I like St. Peter's on the money line. I set them as a 3.5 point favorite. This is going to be a slow and control game. St. Peter's 307th in all of college basketball in terms of total possessions per game, and St. Peter's is one of those teams that is going to gamble for turnovers, but they're very good at gambling for turnovers, as they are currently 15th in the country in terms of turnovers force on a per possession basis, and if they're not dead last in terms of turnover ratio, they're in the bottom 5. Mount St. Mary's is not doing a great job in terms of generating turnovers, 299th in the country in terms of turnovers force on a per possession basis, and they are not taking care of the ball, 364th in terms of turnovers per possession on offense. So that's not great, to say the least, and it's not like this is some sort of a supreme 3-point shooting team. They're outside the top 150 in terms of their 2-point and 3-point shooting percentage. They're a pedestrian offensive rebounding team. Like, you can't offset that many turnovers with being pedestrian so many things. Now, I will say they've got a nice whole is greater than some of its parts approach, with 5 different guys between 9.5 points and 11.4 points per contest. Luke McKeldin, he's been able to give you about 11.5 points per contest, and then Orlandis Keys, Trey Dorno, these two guys, they both give you 11.2 points per game, and then Xavier Lipscomb is a do-it-all guy. 4 assists, 5 boards, 7 points. He shoots 36.5% from 3-point range, but it's not enough, in my opinion, to offset some of their deficiencies, and this is a St. Peter's team that they themselves, while they do a great job in terms of generating turnovers, they're going to get a little bit sloppy with it as well. For St. Peter's, they are turning the ball over about 11 times per contest, but that's much better than what it has been in past years. They're just not a great shooting team. They're outside the top 275 in terms of their 2-point and 3-point shooting percentage, despite having Brett Bland shoot 38.5% from 3, 15 points, 3 steals per contest, but this is also a St. Peter's team that's been pretty good on the offensive boards. In a roadside shoot score venue, 57th in the country, being able to grab 32.7% of their missed shots as an offensive rebound. You get 5 rebounds out of Ja'Kai Guton, hopefully I said that correct, 4.8 boards out of Zakar Williamson, who's got good versatility, 7 points, 5 boards, so I do think that this St. Peter's team is going to be able to win the turnover battle, get the job done in a little bit of a slog of a game, and St. Peter's in a tight game, if they have to hit their free throws, 77.6% free throw line, top 30 mark in the country, so set my line at 3.5. I like St. Peter's on the money line, and on the underside, I total 129.5. 873, 874 on the card. Merrimack is going to be on the road against Siena, and Siena finds themselves as a mid-tier favorite here. You're going to be laying 5.5 points. Totals between 131.5 to 132.5. I like the under. I set my total at a 128. You got a pair of teams that are looking to push no tempo whatsoever. Right now, Merrimack 345th in terms of total possessions per game. Siena is 342nd, and Merrimack is 294th in 3-point shooting percentage at 30.7%. Siena 28.9%, but the Siena defense is better. Merrimack is right around about 199th in terms of points allowed on a per possession basis. As this Merrimack team year in and year out, typically they're in the top 10 in terms of turnovers forced on a per possession basis. It sounds good being 69th, very nice in terms of turnovers forced on a per possession basis, but that's a big fall off, especially when you consider that Merrimack is a bottom 10 team in terms of rebound percentage. They need to do a better job in terms of generating those turnovers, and Merrimack also outside the top 300 with regards to their 2-point shooting percentage. You do have KVR Kennedy supplying 16 points, 4 boards, 4 assists, steal and a half per contest, and Ernest Shelton a steal and a half, 15.5 points per game, and he does shoot, Shelton does, 35.5% from 3-point range, but outside of KVR Kennedy, who's attempted fewer than 10 threes this year, he's the only guy on the roster pretty much that shoots above 30% from 3-point range, and then We've had Casey Uguakazi be able to give you about 2 blocks per contest, so he does give Merrimack a little bit on the inside as they've been a pretty good shot blocking team, but for Siena, they are going to be able to hold up down low, and I do think that they are going to be able to win that battle down low as you've been able to have Gavin Doty be able to give you 16.5 points, 6.5 boards, steal and a half per contest. He only shoots about 32.5% for 3, again, better than the team's 28.9% from the outside, but just so many guys that do a great job down low as right now for the Siena team, you've got 5 different guys that give you at least 4.2 rebounds per game, with having Antonio Chandler give you about 6.5 points, 5.5 rebounds per game. Tasman Gudrick being out, that has hurt the team. He was their top rebounder with about 7 rebounds per game. That did get taken into account with the handicap of Brandon Coyle. He's able to give you 9.5 points, 4 boards. He's been able to generate about a steal per contest as well. And Siena, relatively solid in terms of generating turnovers. Top 125 team. There's a turnovers forced on a per possession basis. A little bit vulnerable on the inside, but they're not allowing a lot of second and third chances. Top 55 team in terms of defensive rebound percentage. I think that Siena is going to be able to win from within, and if you are in a little bit of tighter game, Siena, they're about a country average team, 72% free throw shooting team. So set a total of 128. I like the under, and with Siena, willing to lay up to 5.5 with them. 875, 876 on the card. Canisius is going to be on the road against Manhattan, and the Jaspers find themselves as a 6.5 point favorite. 145.5 is the total. It's on a total of 144.5. I like the under. This has been a Manhattan team that's been just awful with their defense. They're outside the top 320 in terms of points allowed on a per possession basis, but I just don't know if you get enough possessions here for the over. You've got a Canisius team that's 359th in all of college basketball in terms of total possessions per game, and unlike last season where you had a 20 point per game scorer that was able to go out there and light it up in Paul McMillan, you just don't have that this year with Canisius. Now, you've been able to get about 13.5 points per contest out of Khalil Singleton, comes over from Holy Cross, shoots 40% from 3, and Canisius, a solid 3-point shooting team at 34.8%. That's right around about country average, if not a little bit better, but this is also Canisius team outside the top 325 in terms of ball security. They play as slowly as they do, and they turn the ball over 13.7 times per game. They're outside the top 300 in terms of generating turnovers themselves, and I do think that that's going to be helping out this Manhattan team a ton, and that's a big reason why I'm going to be willing to lay with Manhattan, as I did set them as an 8.5 point favorite. Again, with Manhattan about 325th in the country in terms of points allowed on a per possession basis, but it's not as if this Canisius team has been some sort of an amazing defense themselves. With Canisius, they right now find themselves about 288th in the country in terms of points per possession allowed, and if it wasn't for that game against Maine, where Maine scored like 43 points, they'd be way worse than that, and this is still a Manhattan team that does a solid job in terms of being able to hit their threes. They're shooting about 34% as a collective. That's right around about country average, as in the backcourt you've got a pair of guys that are able to give you 14 plus points per contest to really drive the engine, and Jaden Winston and Devin Dinkins. Dinkins actually down to 13.6 points per contest, but he's still shooting about 35% from 3. Winston, he's up to 15.8 points, 2.5 steals, 3.5 assists per contest, and it's a Manhattan team that's been about country average in terms of generating turnovers, so they've done a solid job there, and they do keep you off the free throw line. This is a top 30 team in terms of fewest free throws allowed on a per possession basis, and for this Canisius team, a lot of their points have been coming at the free throw line because they have been outside the top 340 in terms of their 2-point shooting percentage. This is a Manhattan team that has been getting bludgeoned from the outside the top 3 in terms of opponents' 3-point shooting percentage, but I mean, really, both of these teams have been rough with their 2-point shooting. Manhattan outside the top 275 with that regard as well, but Frazier Knight at the Roxborough is able to give you 11.5 points, 6 rebounds per game. You've got Anthony Isaac give you 7 rebounds per game. Nobody knows if you're going to be seeing Will Sidner at all this season. That certainly has been ailing this team, but even though Manhattan has been as poor as they have been on the defensive side of things, and this is a team that's really getting dump trucked on the glass, they are outside the top 350 in terms of defensive rebound percentage. They are allowing teams to grab about 14 offensive rebounds per game, so that has been a little bit less than tremendous. This is a Canisius team that they themselves are going to be allowing plenty of second and third chances on the glass as well, 222nd in the country in terms of defensive rebound percentage. So in the end, I do think that Manhattan gets it done in a low possession game. Semi-total 144.5, willing to take the under, and with Manhattan willing to lay up to 8 with them. 877, 878 on the card. IU Indy is on the road against UW Green Bay. The Phoenix of UW Green Bay are a 7.5 to an 8.5 point favorite. 164.5 to 165.5 is the total. I set my line at 7.5, so 8 plus does become my buy point on IU Indy. With IU Indy, they've slowed down a little bit. Still a warp speed team, 6th in the country in terms of total possessions per game, but last 5 games they've been playing at a rate about 8 possessions per game slower, maybe even 9 possessions per game slower than they did to begin the season. And for IU Indy, I think that they're realizing that perhaps that gimmicky style at the beginning part of the season might not be able to work out so well in the Horizon League. Now, for them, the good news is UW Green Bay does not force turnovers, and they do not grab second chances. UW Green Bay outside the top 340 in terms of turnovers forced on a per possession basis, outside the top 345 in terms of offensive rebound percentage, but these two teams have already squared off once before, and UW Green Bay was able to get the job done in that game. For UW Green Bay, they were able to, on that day, go on the road. They won by a count of 85-75 in a game that UW Green Bay did a solid job of being able to slow down in, and for UW Green Bay, you had a trio of guys, LeBron Thomas, CJ O'Hara, and Preston Rudinger, who were able to give you 20 points apiece, and Marcus Hall, who's really been their top scorer all season long. He's been giving you about 14 points, 5 boards, pair of assists per contest, shoots in the mid-30s from 3. He only had 6 points in that game, but I also do think that for IU Indy, they are starting to be able to realize, hey, we need to do a better job on the glass. They're outside the top 345 in terms of their own rebound percentage, and they are outside the top 340 in terms of opponents' 2-point and 3-point shooting percentage. No doubt about that's an issue, but you've got Kyler D'Agostino, who's able to give you 18 points, 3 boards, 3 assists. He's been able to shoot 37% from 3. Cameron Tinsley has been able to give you some versatility. Shoots about 34.5% from 3, 9.5 points per game. And for UW Green Bay, a guy that you had in LeBron Thomas, who was so good in that game a few weeks ago, he just hasn't given the team a lot ever since then. You've had Caden Wilkins be able to give you about 7.5 points per contest, but there's just not a lot of size on this team outside of Miran Cisic, who only gives you about 15 minutes per game, and he's only been playing in there less than 3 rebounds per game. Justin Allen has really been an X factor recently for Green Bay, 12.5 points, right around about 2.5 rebounds per game. And for Green Bay, the offense is getting a little bit better. Defense is still very, very suspect with this team. They are outside the top 3 in terms of points allowed on a per possession basis, and IU Indy, I mean, they are 345th, so you do have a pair of teams that are certainly giving it up on the defensive side of things. But I do think that IU Indy, even though I don't think that they're going to be able to pull out this game with them being at much less of a disadvantage than they typically are on the glass, that helps them hold in there. And I do think that they're going to be able to generate some turnovers despite Green Bay being a top 150 team in terms of taking care of the ball. So set a total of 167.5. Think that you're close enough for late game fouling, like the over, and at 8+, won't take those points with IU Indy. 879, 880 on the card. It is Ryder, and they're going to be on the road against Fairfield. The Stags of Fairfield are an 8.5 point favorite. 141.5 to 143.5 is the total. Set a total of 137.5. I'm in on the under. Ryder is just not going to do their part with this total, in my opinion. They are currently 325th in all of college basketball in terms of total possessions per game, and I really don't know what Ryder does well. They are currently 328th in the country in terms of points per possession allowed. They are outside the top 310 in terms of both turnovers forced and turnovers that they have given up on a per possession basis on offense and on defense. They're 358th in the country in terms of points scored on a per possession basis out of 365 Division I teams. They are 365th with their 3-point shooting percentage at 24.9%. It's really not good, to say the least, and I did set this line at a 15.5. I'm going to be willing to lay it with Fairfield, even though Fairfield, not a great shooting team. They're about 172nd in terms of their 3-point shooting percentage, hovering right around about 299th with their 2-point shooting percentage, but they've been 43rd in terms of fewest turnovers on a per possession basis, 72nd in terms of offensive rebound percentage, and they are going to be able to take it to, in my opinion, a Ryder team that you do have 2 guys who have been okay on the glass. Caleb Smith along with Shamani Fuller have both been able to give you about 6.5 rebounds per game. They combined give you about 14 points per contest. It's a Ryder team that has been a top 250 team in terms of rebound percentage, but when you have all those turnovers, when you're not shooting well from 3-point range or 2-point range, you're outside the top 350 in terms of their 2-point shooting percentage as well. That's not great. Only 2 guys on the roster give you over 7.4 points per game. Flash Burton, Zion Cruz, they both give you about 11.5 points per game, and both shoot less than 25% from 3. And for Caleb Smith, he attempts less than 1 3 per game. He is the only guy that I've seen in action in more than 4 games as far this season, or has shot at least 5 threes this year, that is shooting above 29% from 3-point range. That is not good, to say the least. Meanwhile, for Fairfield, they've been able to have a lot of sparks. Braden Sparks, who's been really good with about 18 points. She's 44% from 3-point range. Brandon Benjamin, 14.5 points, 9.5 rebounds per game. Declan Wolfinger, he's been able to give you about 8 rebounds, 12.5 points per game. Deuce Turner down for what? A little bit of slow start to the season. He's now been able to give you about 9.5 points per game as well. It is a Fairfield team that is going to allow some open looks from 3. They've been outside the top 250 in terms of opponents' 3-point shooting percentage. But again, is this Ryder team going to be able to do their part with it? I don't think so. For Fairfield, not necessarily the most stout defensive team in the world in terms of points allowed on a per possession basis. They are hovering right around about 227th in all of college basketball. But I do think that the absolute ineptitude of this Ryder offense is going to be very costly. And for Fairfield, they're still doing a pretty solid job in terms of not allowing a bunch of second and third chances as well. Top 110 team in terms of defensive rebound percentage. Set set a total of 137.5. I like the under, and with Fairfield, made them the 15.5 point favorite. I'm going to be willing to lay the number. 881, 882 on the card. Cleveland State is going to be on the road against Oakland. Oakland, a 14.5 point favorite. 173.5 is the total, and set a line at 15.5. I'm going to be willing to lay this number. You've got a Cleveland State team that's just given up so many second chances. They are currently allowing teams to grab 36.4% of their missed shots as an offensive rebound, 351st in all of college basketball, and they're just getting absolutely ballroom blitz on defense. 352nd in terms of points allowed on a per possession basis. You got an Oakland team that has not been good defensively as well. 338th in all of college basketball in terms of points allowed on a per possession basis. And it's an Oakland team that's starting to push pace, 82nd in the country in terms of total possessions per game. Cleveland State, they are 67th, and for Cleveland State, they're taking a little bit of better care of the ball, but I do think that is going to be a bit of a backbreaker, and that's a big reason why I'm going to be willing to lay with Oakland. Oakland is not a team that's really going to be forcing a lot of turnovers, but Cleveland State, about 314th in the country in terms of turnovers on a per possession basis. If you look at what they've been able to do in a roadside-score venue, they're a bottom 40 team in terms of taking care of the ball, and this is an Oakland team that has been able to do a pretty solid job in making sure that their possessions stay clean, especially at home. They only turn the ball over on 9.6% of their possessions at home. That is a top 10 mark in all of college basketball. Overall, they're more around about 27th, but for Oakland, big reason why they've been so clean on offense. Brody Robinson coming over from UT Arlington, 16.6 assists, shoots 39.5% from three. In Oakland, a solid but not amazing three-point shooting team at 35%, but Zaire Wells shoots 38% from the outside, 9.5 points, 4.8 rebounds per game, and this team as a collective does a solid job on glass. Mike Hoagie, who missed about 5 games to begin the season, he and Bori Navalura have both been able to combine for about 10.6 rebounds per game between the two of them, 27 points per game, and then Isaac Garrett, 15.5 points, 2.5 assists, 1.3 steals, a block, 7 rebounds per game. Really good versatility there. And Cleveland State has been a team that's been able to shoot it relatively well from three-point range. Cleveland State as a collective, they shoot about 37.5% from three. That's a top 45 mark in the country, with Trey Beard leading the way, shooting 45% from three, 14 points per contest. You've got Ace Emery, who's been able to shoot 40% from three, 12 points per contest. And Josiah Harris, Jane Lipscomb, when they've been out there, they've been able to combine for about 19.5 points per game. And Harris has dealt with a little bit of injury, should be good to go here. Had a double-double to wrap up the calendar year against IU Indy, so that's a little bit encouraging. But with the way that this Cleveland State team is losing the turnover battle, the way that they just allow a lot inside, they are outside the top 320 in terms of opponents' two-point shooting percentage. And while this is an Oakland team that shoots a relatively solidly from three, they're also a top 50 team in terms of percentage of their shots that come from inside the arc. I do think that Oakland is going to be able to land base them as a result. Did somebody total 171.5. I do think that the Cleveland State turnovers costly to an over, so in on the under and willing to lay up to 15 here with Oakland. 883, 884. It is Niagara on the road against Iona. Iona is a 12.5 point favorite. 141.5 to 143.5 is the total, and I did set a total here of a 144.5. So I'm going to be willing to take a shot on the over. You've got an Iona group that I made a 16.5 point favorite, mainly because the Niagara team, again, what are they really doing a good job of? For Niagara, they're not taking great care of the ball in a roadside shoot-score venue. They're outside the top 260 in terms of turnovers on a per possession basis. Niagara 327th in all of college basketball in terms of points scored on a per possession basis, outside the top 300 in terms of points allowed on a per possession basis. And typically the forte of Niagara is their three-point shooting. Right now they're shooting 28% from three-point range away from home, overall 31.2%. That is 278th in all of college basketball, and they're absolutely getting waxed from the outside by these teams as well. Right now they are allowing teams to shoot 38.8% for three-point range, goes up to 42.7% in a roadside shoot-score venue. While this is an Iona team that is 51st in the country in terms of opponents' three-point shooting percentage, for Niagara, you really don't return much other than Mr. Page, as you've been able to get Justin Page to go for 12.5 points per contest, lone guy in the roster that gives you over 9 points per game. And then you've got Reggie Perdume, who's been able to give you about 7 points per contest. Justin Hawkins, he throws in there 9 points, 3 rebounds per game. But I mean, man, for this Niagara team, things have been very rough for them, to say the least. They're also outside the top 250 with regards to their own 2-point shooting percentage. On the other side of things, you've got an Iona team that has been able to do a bad job in terms of being able to win the rebound battle, as they are allowing a lot of second and third chances. They are outside the top 300 in terms of their own offensive rebound percentage, but Niagara outside the top 350 in terms of offensive rebound percentage, so they don't have to worry about that quite as much. And for this Iona team, they have the best player out there on the floor in CJ Anthony, 15.5 points, 5.7 assists, shoots 38.5% from three. Toby Harris, he shoots 42.5% from the outside. Denver Anglin is a guy that likes to bomb it from three-point range as well. You've got an Iona team that does leave themselves vulnerable on the inside, outside the top 275 in terms of opponent's two-point shooting percentage, but they keep you off the free throw line, with Niagara just doing a very, very bad job in general with their offense, with their defense, and Niagara being a very slow and controlled team compared to Iona, a very fast team. Iona 43rd in the country in terms of total possessions per game. Niagara 353rd. Makes it a very interesting tempo war. I'm going to be blown away with Iona. I did set them as a favorite of 16.5 points. I do think that we see a little bit of regression with that Iona 3-point shooting defense. So did set a total of 144.5. I like the over. 885, 886. You've got Wright St. They're on the road against Detroit. Detroit is a home underdog here of 4.5 to 5.5 points. 146.5 to 147.5 is the total line. With Wright St, it made them an 8.5 point favorite. I'm going to be willing to lay this number. You've got a Wright St team that has slowed down for past years. Right now, they're checking in 226th in the country in terms of total possessions per game. Detroit about 141st, and Detroit just 240th in terms of points per possession, outside the top 295 in terms of their 3-point shooting percentage. And Wright State has really been able to rise up with their defense away from home. A lot of it has been thanks to doing a nice job in terms of generating turnovers. With Wright State, they do rank in the top 65 in terms of turnovers forced on a per possession basis in a road/core venue. One away from home, they're 75th in terms of points per possession allowed, with Michael Cooper, a freshman, really stepping up for the team. 15.5 points, 3 assists, shoots 37% from 3-point range. Solomon Caglin has been able to shoot about 38% from 3-point range. I like what he's able to bring to the table. And then you get 3 steals per game out of TJ Birch. He throws in there 9 points. Not necessarily a guy that's going to light you up from 3 or anything like that. And Wright State has been very solid on the glass. They've been a top 175 team in terms of their overall rebound percentage, despite only having one guy, Michael Emarabaje, who's been able to give you over 4.6 rebounds per game. And on the flip side of things, Detroit has been able to give themselves some second chances. They are a top 125 team in terms of offensive rebound percentage. They're also allowing teams to grab 33.3% of their missed shots as an offensive rebound, and that is at home. They're outside the top 310 with that regard. DJ Nadeau has been a very good 3-point shooter, shooting 47.5% from 3, 13.5 points per game. He is the only player on the roster that shoots above 30% from 3-point range. Orlando Lovejoy has actually suffered about 12.5 points, 3.5 assists per contest. You've been able to get a little bit of something down low out of Aiden Carter when he's been out there, but he has been dealing with injury all throughout the year. He's probably going to be out of the fold once again in this game as well, so that leaves Detroit a little bit vulnerable. And outside of Carter, Lovejoy, and Nadeau, nobody else gives you more than 7 points per contest. Legend Geeter has been able to give you 5 rebounds per game. He's like the only healthy guy right now. That's give you over 3.5 rebounds per game. And I do think that Wright State is going to be able to generate some turnovers in this game against a Detroit team that's about country average in terms of taking care of the ball. In Detroit, outside the top 290 in their 2-point shooting percentage as well. I think that allows this bunch in Wright State to be able to get the job done. I did set my total at a 148.5. This is going to be, in my opinion, a little bit more of an up and down game, and you got a Wright State team that has really been starting to score a little bit more here in conference play. Top 125 team in terms of their 3-point shooting percentage. So here at a 147.5, 146.5. I like the over, and I'm willing to lay it at 8 with Wright State. 887, 888. Akron is going to be on the road against Bowling Green. Bowling Green, a home underdog of 3.5 points. 165.5 to 166.5 is the total. Set Akron as a 2.5 point favorite. So at 3+, I'm going to be willing to take the points with Bowling Green. Now, this is going to be a clash of styles. Bowling Green is a top 20 team in all of college basketball in terms of turnovers forced on a per possession basis. Meanwhile, you've got an Akron team that's been excellent on offense. They are number 4 in the country in terms of points scored on a per possession basis, and much of it is because they are doing little things well. This is an Akron team that is 55th in the country in terms of their ball security. They're not really turning it over a ton. They do a great job with their 3-point shooting, their 2-point shooting, but we also have a Bowling Green team that, on top of generating turnovers, they've done a really good job in terms of not allowing second and third chances. Top 85 team in all of college basketball in terms of defensive rebound percentage, and I do think that that's going to be able to keep them very lively in this game. With Bowling Green, you've got a guy that I think is one of the most underrated guards in all of college basketball, and Javonte Campbell, just doing it all. This guy gives you over 3.2 steals per contest. He's been thrown in there about 18 points. He only shoots about 23.5% from 3, but team as a whole shoots 34.5% from the outside. Meyer Wool, he's a 6'7" combo player that comes over from Eastern Kentucky, 43.5% 3-point shooter, 11.5 points per contest. Same Towns, he's running this Towns with about 13.5 points, 6.6 rebounds per game. And for this Bowling Green team, each out of your top 7 scorers generate at least 1 steal per contest. So it is everyone with active hands. And then for this Akron bunch, you've been able to get 20 plus points per contest out of Tavari Johnson. He throws in there 5.3 assists per game. Shoots 42% from 3, 90% at the free throw line. Just absolutely ridiculous what we're seeing there. Akron, they shoot 37.5% from the outside. And it's an Akron team that's been able to travel with regards to that 3-point shooting percentage as well. This is a team that, whether they're at home, whether they're on the road, this is a team that they just flat out execute with regards to their offense. As a matter of fact, with regards to Akron 3-point shooting percentage, percentage in a roadside shoot score venue that still stays right around about 39.9%. That's even better than what they do at home. You've got Evan Mahaffey, who's maybe 10.5 points, shoots 37.5% from 3, and each of your top 5 scores for Akron do shoot at least 37.5% from 3. Armani Lyle, 6.5 boards, about 15 points per game, but with the way that Bowling Green has been able to do a great job on the glass, this is an Akron team that's about country average with regards to their own defensive rebound percentage. Akron has been outside the top 200 in terms of opponents' three-point shooting percentage. Akron also doing a good job in terms of generating turnovers themselves, top 80 team in terms of turnovers forced on a per possession basis. I think that those turnovers are just enough for you to have an under in this spot. So I told 164.5, and at 3+, I'm going to take the points with Bowling Green. 889, 890 on the card. Northern Kentucky is going to be on the road against UW Milwaukee, and UW Milwaukee does find themselves as a mid-tier favorite here of 3.5 points. So this game between 154.5 to 155.5. Made my line 4.5. So you're at a 3.5, 3. I'm going to be willing to lay it with UW Milwaukee. You got a pair of teams that are going to be playing relatively mid-tempo in this game. For Northern Kentucky, in terms of total possessions per game, they sped themselves up a little bit from past seasons, as right now they are about 98th in the country in terms of total possessions per game. Milwaukee, very mid-tier, about 198th in the country in terms of total possessions per game. But for this UW Milwaukee team, what they do a really nice job of just being able to take advantage of those possessions, as they're currently a top 15 team in terms of fewest turnovers on a per possession basis, and that cuts right into the forte of Northern Kentucky, who overall is 26th in the country in terms of turnovers forced on a per possession basis. That goes to number 6 when they're in a roadside shoot score venue. UW Milwaukee, they're not forcing any turnovers whatsoever. Currently, they're 294th in all of college basketball, but in their home games, they actually do become a top 150 team in terms of generating those turnovers. So we've seen a little bit of flipperoonie there, and for Northern Kentucky, you've got really one guy that's able to do a nice job on the glass. That'd be LJ Wells, 13.5 points, 8.8 rebounds per game. It's a little bit of a top-heavy team here with Northern Kentucky. Donovan Ode has been really that set. She suffered 16 points, pair of steals, 4 boards. Doesn't necessarily pop well from 3, but he's been able to do a nice job of just flowing things. Dan Gressinger has been that top scorer, 17 points, shoots 37.5% from 3. Khalil Robinson shoots 45.5% from the outside, and this is not a UW Milwaukee team that's going to go into flamethrower mode from 3-point range or anything like that, but you've got Danilo Janovic, who's been able to give you 13 points, 6.5 rebounds per game, and for UW Milwaukee, they are truly one of those teams that they just do the little things well. I mentioned how well they are taking care of the ball. This is also a really good offensive rebound rate team as well. They are grabbing about 36.3% of their missed shots in their home games as an offensive rebound. That is a top 55 mark in all of college basketball. They deal with the injury to Seth Albert. That's a main score of 16.5 points per game, and that has caused Amar Uyagard to take a little bit more ownership of the offense. 11 points per contest. Shoots about 33% from 3-point range. And Stevie Elam, he's been dealing with quite a bit of injury as well. When he's been out there, he's been able to shoot 40% from 3-point range. He's probably going to be out the full once again. We haven't seen him over the last few weeks, so those injuries in the backcourt did have to be taken into account. But Facing on Fields has been able to give you 6+ rebounds per game, and in the interim, you've still been able to get some relatively good production out of a main facilitator in Isaiah Dosiris, who's only been able to give you about 6 points per contest, but 4.3 assists per game. He's stepped up to the plate, shooting in the mid-30s from 3-point range, and I do think that the overall discipline of UW Milwaukee is going to be able to help this team find a way to be able to get the job done against the Northern Kentucky team that, while they do a great job in terms of generating turnovers, they themselves outside the top 250 in terms of their own ball security. So set a total of a 154.5. I'm going to be willing to lay it with UW Milwaukee, and a 155 or higher like the unders. 891, 892 on the card. USC is going to be on the road facing off against Minnesota, the state with the smallest drinks in the union. Minnesota, a 2.5 point favorite. So on this game, 145.5 to 146.5. I said USC as a 4-point favorite. I recognize that Rodney Rice is out of the fold. I recognize that things for USC just certainly have not been great recently, but I do like this team to be able to win the game outright on the money line. Now, you've got a Minnesota team that's been doing a really good job in terms of not allowing second and third chances, in terms of their defensive rebound percentage. This is a unit that is currently checking in 37th in all of college basketball, and 21.5% of opponents' missed shots become an offensive rebound. But this is a Minnesota team that's about 125th in terms of points scored on a per possession basis, hovering around about 200th in terms of their 3-point shooting percentage. And you've got a USC team that's been very good down low in terms of denying shots. They are 18th in the country in terms of block shot percentage. And you've got a Minnesota team that they've been much better with their defense at home rather than away from home. Minnesota, a top 10 team in terms of points allowed on a per possession basis at home. They are quite literally giving up over 30 points more per win on possessions when they're away from home rather than at home. And we saw USC struggle with a pair of top 20 defenses over the last week or so in Michigan and Michigan State. But I do think that this team has gone around into form a little bit more with Chad Baker-Mazara being that go-to guy, giving you about 19.5 points, 5 boards, 3 assists. He's been able to shoot 36% from three-point range. USC doesn't necessarily have one thing that they excel in other than getting to the free throw line. This USC team, top 5 team in all of college basketball in terms of free throw attempts on a per possession basis. For USC, they have been outside the top 240 in terms of ball security. They are turning the ball over 13 times per game, and Rodney Rice being out, that's going to hurt them a little bit more, but it's not as if you've got some sort of Minnesota team that's going to be out there trying for a bunch of turnovers, as Minnesota's built a little bit more inside. You've got a guy that I really like in Cade Tyson, 21.5 points, 5 boards. He was really good over at Belmont a few seasons ago. He's now shooting 40% from 3, and Jalen Crocker-Johnson, great versatility, 13 points, 7 boards. He shoots 35% from 3-point range. Really nobody else other than Kai Schinzholzer, who's only giving you about 2.5 points per game, is shooting above 32.5% from 3-point range. You've got a team that does a relatively solid job on the glass. Langston Reynolds, good versatility, 4 assists, 4.5 rebounds, 10.5 points per game, but it's a Minnesota team that is outside the top 200 in terms of turnovers forced on a per possession basis, and it is going to be a very interesting tempo war, because for USC, I do think that they're going to be playing a little bit slower moving forward. Right now, they're 17th in the country in terms of total possessions per game, but the ailments, that's going to be causing a little bit of slowdown. Minnesota, they're 333rd in the country in terms of total possessions per game, but I do think that Rice injury is going to cause USC to play a little bit more inside, as Rusar is able to give you about 17 points, right around about 6 rebounds per game. You've got a 7'3" big man in Gabe Dines who's able to give you some blocks. They've been giving Jerry Easter some minutes as well. I do think that this USC team, even though they're all sorts of banged up, they find a way to be able to get the job done on the road. I like USC on the money line, and I'm in on the under semi-total 143, and wrap things up with 893, 894. UNLV, they're on the road against Colorado State. Colorado State finds themselves as a favorite of 6.5 to 7.5 points. 152.5 is the total. Semi-total 154.5. I like the over. Now you've got a tempo war in this game as well. Colorado State currently 362nd in the country in terms of total possessions per game. UNLV is 34th, and UNLV is actually doing a solid job in terms of guarding the 3-point line. They're 102nd with opponents shooting 31.7% from the outside, and this is a Colorado State team that they're really good with their offense. 22nd in the country in terms of points scored on a per possession basis. Top 5 team in terms of their 3-point shooting percentage at 41.1%, and for Colorado State in terms of points allowed on a per possession basis, currently a nice hearty 297th in all of college basketball, outside the top 3 at home. But you've also got a UNLV team that's been outside the top 330 with their own 3-point shooting percentage, not having out there the UC Irvine transfer. Miles Shea has really been hurting them, though they've been able to have Trey Gibbs-Lawhorn do a nice job being that main scorer, 16.5 points, 3 assists per contest. He shoots 35.5% from 3-point range, but among players that have taken at least a half a 3 per game, he is the only other top 8 scorers that shoots above 30.5% from 3-point range. So that's a little bit of an issue. You had a UNLV team that's been pretty solid in terms of generating turnovers, top 100 team in terms of turnovers forced on a per possession basis. But again, just all those warts and being outside the top 200 with regards to opponents' 2-point shooting percentage, I think that that's going to be a little bit costly. And this is not necessarily a Colorado State team that's going to be out there fighting for a lot of second and third chances, but they might get a few more than normal against a UNLV team that, even though they do have back their true 7-footer Emmanuel Stevens, they're 250th in the country in terms of defensive rebound percentage, and they are allowing teams to grab 37.6% of their missed shots in a roadside shoot score venue as an offensive rebound. That's outside the top 3 in all of college basketball. And this is a Colorado State team that is not really going to be imposing their will too much with regards to glass, but you know what? They are allowing teams to grab only about 23.5% of their misses as an offensive rebound at home. That is a top 150 mark in all of college basketball. And for Colorado State, just everyone is able to pop it and lock it from 3-point. Josh Passarelli, 12.5 points on over 43% 3-point shooting. Now, they already with an injury to Kyle Jorgensen. That's their main scorer with about 14 points per game. He's been out since Christmas, and I think that he's going to be out once again. But Jevin Muniz at 6'5", 6'6", great versatility, 8.5 points, 4.5 boards, 4.5 assists. He's not necessarily the greatest 3-point shooter, but Brandon Rechsteiner, Kerry Booth, they both shoot above 43% from 3, a combined 24 points per game, and Booth has been able to give you about 7 rebounds per game. It is a Colorado State team that does leave themselves a bit vulnerable on the inside. They're outside the top 275 in terms of opponents' 2-point shooting percentage, and they're not going to generate turnovers. This Colorado State team outside the top 330 in terms of turnovers forced on a per possession basis, but I just flat out think that Colorado State going to be able to execute their offense. Augustus Caudulis has been seeing more minutes ever since Kyle Jorgensen went down with an injury, a combined 35 points in the last 2 games. He's been shooting 40+% from 3, coming over as a 6'8" combo player from VMI. I do think that this bunch in Colorado State efficient enough to be able to get it done against a UNLV UNLV team that now has to go to elevation. So my total 154.5, like the over, and I'm willing to lay up to 8 with Colorado State. And that wraps things up for the Friday edition of Coast to Coast Hoops, now part of the VSIN family of podcasts. If you do like hearing from this fine podcast, Coast to Coast Hoops, you're able to subscribe wherever your podcasts, Apple Podcasts, Google Play, Spotify, Stitcher, and TuneIn. If you have a question, comment, segment idea, what have you for this podcast, you have one of two ways we offer those in. First one is my Twitter/X timeline at gunit_81. Keep in mind, letter CM, they mean does not matter. So, per usual, please do send these into the timeline. Other way is via an Apple Podcast review. If you rate this podcast 5 stars, it's very much appreciated. From there, you're able to fire in whatever you'd like to hear on this podcast via that 5-star review. Big thanks to Ben Steven, who does such great work here at VSIN, for joining me in the last segment. And I'm with you guys every single day on this podcast, giving you picks and analysis on every game, every day. So I'll be back with you once again tomorrow. Thank you.